Hola amigos, this is Seño Bluemel. Today we have Allison Wienhold, who is joining us to talk to us about how she teaches Spanish using comprehensible input through novels and story units. Welcome, Allison.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a Spanish teacher in small town Iowa. I grew up in Illinois and went to school at the University of Northern Iowa, where I have my bachelor's and master's from. I'm married and I have two little boys who are 5 and 3. 3-year-old is currently napping and my 5-year-old is having quiet times.
So how long have you been teaching?
This is my 8th year teaching Spanish. Because I teach at such a small school, I am, as I call myself, a department of one. So I teach all levels. I'm the only world language teacher in my entire district. So I teach at my school, it's high school Spanish 1 through 4.
Have you visited any Spanish-speaking countries?
Yep, I studied abroad for a semester in Oviedo, Spain while I was in college. I also lived for a summer in Rota, Spain in college, and have been to Mexico 4 different times, as well as the Dominican Republic. And I'll be going to Costa Rica with students this summer.
Favorite book?
I can't pick.
Favorite quote?
For my class, it's todo es posible en la clase de español.
What is something you're proud of?
My family.
What is something that you wish to be known for?
Kindness.
Briefly tell us about your journey from student teaching to being now the creator of Mis Clases Locas, a blogger, and creator of tons of resources in Teachers Pay Teachers.
I would say I didn't really know I wanted to be a teacher right away. I went into university as an undecided major. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had done a program called Camp Adventure in the summer where I was a camp counselor, and then I had realized, okay, I do think I want to go into teaching. I'd always loved Spanish. I'd started taking Spanish classes right away, and so then it just kind of melded, decided I wanted to be a Spanish teacher. To be honest, my student teaching wasn't the greatest, so much in fact that then I didn't teach right away. I went and got my master's because at that point, I didn't really want to be a teacher. During the time getting my master's, I decided, okay, I do. Went back, started teaching, and then actually taught at a small private school for 3 years. And my second year teaching, I actually created this little blog as just a way to try and give back. I'd been collaborating with so many people online through link chat and following other blogs, and I just wanted to give back a little bit. So I just started this little blog 5.5 years ago. So if you want to see the whole journey from way back, you can go back to the old posts and see from the rough starts of just sharing what I was doing, even though it was very imperfect, and just sharing and failures and everything along the way.
Are you collaborating with other Spanish teachers through your blog?
Yep, so I have my blog, Mis Clases Locas, as well as I collaborate with a group of 6 other Spanish teachers on a blog that's called the Secondary Spanish Space, which has been around for about 3 years as well. So that's just another kind of project to be able to collaborate with other teachers and resource creators in a different way instead of just by myself.
Tell us about the products involving teaching and learning Spanish that you create.
Everything I create is because of a need in my own classes. And so a lot of the things are things to help save teachers time, for teachers like myself who teach many different levels. And so when your brain's going, for example, in my morning, I go from Spanish 2 to Spanish 4 to Spanish 1 to Spanish 2 again, and then to Spanish 3. And so resources that can be adapted and used at all levels is, I think, something that is a strong point of mine, just because it's a necessity. Routines and things that can be used across levels. Also, just things that I've realized I wanted. Like, for example, I knew I wanted to start the year with my Spanish 1 with high frequency words. And this was a few years ago, and I just couldn't find what I wanted. So I created it, and I created a resource that now I've used and refined over many years. I've also used it when I taught some middle school exploratory classes. And I think it's become one of the most popular things because it's something that I personally used, made better. Other teachers have given me feedback. And then I think those are the best resources, are the ones that are classroom tested and then put out in the world to see if other people would like to enjoy them as well.
There are many ways to teach foreign language, and one of the methods that you favored is comprehensible input. Could you tell us what that means to you, and how do you go about planning your units using that method?
Okay, and so just kind of as a disclaimer, this is not something I don't feel like I was taught in that way. I was taught in a much more traditional sense. My first 2 years of teaching, I used textbooks, and then kind of through online and conferences started learning more about this method. So I don't consider myself an expert, but for me, it just means helping students acquire language in a more natural way. The same way that with my own children, teaching them languages and trying to help it be a natural process where it's fun and the language is at their level, as opposed to, and also teaching in the language. And I think that's a big difference, as I used to give PowerPoints about a grammar point, but in English, and now instead we're telling stories or reading or doing music or things, but all in comprehensible language that the students can understand but also connect with.
What novels do you use throughout the year? How many new ones do you introduce, and what methods do you use to teach those novels?
So because I am my own department and I can do what I want, I've adapted. I have a whole, I guess, the curriculum that I use is posted on my website. If you just search curriculum, it's one of the most popular posts. And the story units that I mostly use are from Martina Bex's Somos curriculum. And so using her units, which are already made, awesome, ready to go. I do use about 4 of the acquisition-based readers, those type of novels, throughout the year in every level that I teach. And depending, I used to spend a lot longer on the books, but now I've been kind of pre-teaching the vocabulary and the content and things, and then we'll read the actual book in a much shorter amount of time, only in a week or 2, so we can focus on the story. But on the front and after, we do a lot more with the authentic resources relating, maybe adding films and music and other things to help give more of a full unit that includes a lot of different modes of communication, and also digging deep into some different cultural topics. And I try to pick books as well that are set all over the Spanish-speaking world, so my students get diverse perspectives and a variety of different places and people who speak Spanish. My biggest goal is just that students are acquiring the language, and so I would be able to see that just through kind of their performance and following along with how they're going through, if they're increasing in their performance and language ability. And so I guess that's the biggest way. My school does use standard-based grading, and so we are constantly working to help make sure that students are proficient in different modes of communication, and then providing intervention if they are not in a certain area.
What has been the most challenging part of teaching using this method, the comprehensible input versus the traditional textbook?
I think the biggest thing for me was just building the confidence in myself of the language and trying new things. Then I started using this method, and then I switched to a new school. And so not only transitioning myself, but helping students transition who have maybe used a different method, different teachers. And so trying to help them bridge that gap of kind of the expectations. At least in my class, I also don't have any desks. So that's a lot different for the students. A lot of times we sit around in a semicircle and chat. And so working on those expectations of what is expected of them, of that they need to respond in Spanish, that they are pointing their eyes to the source of input and actually participating, which I know is a lot different than in a lot of classes where they're just expected to sit and absorb, but I expect that they are interacting. And
what inspires you to create materials?
I think the biggest thing that inspires me is the need of my students, but also when other people use resources that I have created and then give ideas of, I really loved this, but I could really use this same type of material, but maybe in the past tense, or I would really love this. So even just suggestions of other people.
What are some of your favorite online resources or programs or materials that you would recommend to other foreign language teachers?
And for Spanish teachers, I really enjoy, my students enjoy the music of Señor Woolley. We have a subscription to Señor Woolley Pro, and it's really nice to break up. So for example, almost all of my classes just finished a novel unit, and so after Thanksgiving break, many of my classes will get to do a Señor Woolley unit, and so something different for them. I really enjoy that. Like many teachers, I like to be able to pull ready-made resources. We do have one-to-one. So Google Classroom is a big part of my class. Also just using online resources like Gimkit and quizzes and Kahoot, and being able to mix it up and do a variety of things.
You are creating or choosing the units you are going to teach. What drives your decision, and how many units do you teach in a school year?
I think it all depends. I teach, some units are bigger than others, some are just mini. So for example, when I do like a Señor Woolley unit, it's quite often just a week. I also like to do a lot of cultural units around holidays. They completely vary in length from maybe a month, sometimes only a week. It's all to match the calendar, match what's going on in class, so there's a variety of factors of when I decide to do different things at different times, and it varies from year to year depending on what works, what didn't work, and just trying to help students acquire more language and move them up, and trying to incorporate a variety of themes. Really been trying to do a better job of having more real world style assessments, in the fact that now in the state of Iowa, where I teach, for the opportunity for the sale of Biliteracy. And so my students have been taking the AAPPL test. And so that is more what in that test, there are more situational things that they need to write an email or make a blog post. And so I've learned that I need to do a better job of providing those opportunities, so that hopefully my students can get the sale of Biliteracy.
So tell us more about the AAPPL text and what it has, and how is that helping you drive your units and what you teach?
And so for any kind of proficiency-based test, at least the ones that I've seen, they're mostly broken up by modes of communication. So for example, in AAPPL, it's reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And so that was already what kind of I divide my class. Those are like the categories in my gradebook anyway. And because I do like that it is more acquisition focused. It's not just a test with a bunch of grammar questions. And so it's more about, can they apply that skill? Can they, and then it actually tells them, that you are I1, so like an intermediate low in reading, or you are N4, like a novice high in writing. And so it gives them a specific proficiency level for each mode. And so I'm not trying to teach to a test, but this is how I just want the students to acquire the language and grow their proficiency in the different levels.
Who has inspired you the most in your journey as a Spanish teacher?
I would say I have a lot of different inspirations, both in person, from people who I've met at conferences. I don't have any colleagues since I am the only Spanish teacher. So what's really inspired me are those colleagues that I have met online, through Ling Chat, and then getting to meet these people at conferences. So for example, Amy Leonard from Texas, like connecting with her online for years. And then I actually ended up getting to go to Texas, that she invited me to go to their World Language Association. So going from making those connections online, but then having those relationships blossom in person as well, and getting to connect with people continuously through social media, through emails, and just helping to support each other moving forward.
Who are some of the top people you follow on Twitter, Instagram, or blogs?
So there's so many, and I mean, it changes throughout. I would say if you look back of the people who inspired me to start my blog, back in the day, it was people like Laura Sexton and Sarah Elizabeth Cuttrell and Amy Leonard and Martina Bex and Meredith White and Maris Hawkins, and all of these people who have been sharing prolifically for years. And those are the still people. I still follow their blogs and I still follow what they're doing on social media. There's a lot more people who have inspired me along the way. People like Elizabeth, who is Spanish Mama, other people who I've connected with kind of along the way and who have helped to support me in my journey.
What advice would you give to a teacher who wants to try the comprehensible input but doesn't know where to start?
For that teacher who's trying things out, I would highly recommend purchasing or getting a unit that is ready-made for you, that has instruction units similar to like what Martina Bex provides in her Somos curriculum. So that way it gives you a lot of guidance, a lot of links to extra support. Visit someone who is using this method and observe them to see what it's like. Go to a conference if that's an option, to be able to learn more strategies and practice. Pick one little strategy, try it out, try asking a story, try doing a little movie talk, try discussing something, try doing a weekend talk, and just try it out. And that's what a lot of things, I tried them out, they failed, but then I tried them again. I got feedback from my students.
What professional development opportunities do you recommend?
I think there's so many professional development opportunities out there. For example, I've been a part of a couple different online conferences for teachers, the Spanish Teacher Success Academy, the World Language Teacher Summit. And so these are still online, are available, that you can purchase. You can watch them from your home. I have links to those in my blog as well if you would want to sign up for those. But also finding out your state language organizations. That's what's been one of the best sources for me, is becoming a part of my state language organization. I'm actually currently the president of the Iowa World Language Association. Maybe getting some time to go visit somebody else's class, or starting to create a professional learning network of teachers in your area. Some of the teachers in my area are my best source of support. We've started at our local area education association. They're letting us meet there twice a year. If there isn't something out there, you can help create it, or bring in a speaker, bring in something to your area if you feel like it's something that would be valuable to you or your team or people to learn about.
How do you balance life and teaching, like your personal life and teaching, and when do you know when to stop thinking about what you're going to do the next day?
For me, this is one of my biggest focus areas right now, is trying to have a better work-life balance. For quite a while, ever since having kids, my rule has been I don't take schoolwork home. And so my students know that. For example, we took a test the day before break, the last hour of the day, and the students even mentioned, they had said like, "What, you're not going to grade this over break, right?" And I'm like, "You're correct. I won't give you homework over break. I'm not giving myself homework. I'm going to leave it right here on my desk. I will grade it on Monday morning when we come back, when I have time." And so I think that's a really clear line for me, is schoolwork doesn't go home. Yes, sometimes I blog and I create resources, but that's more of as a hobby, as something fun. I'm not grading at home. And that's one thing. I also took my work email off my phone. And so it's not on my phone. So when I went on vacation or on the weekend, if it was really an emergency, my principal or someone would call or text me. If it's an email, it means it can wait until I get back, and that's fine. I'm trying to keep nights and weekends for my kids and my husband and my friends, and then that way, and then when I am at work, I can focus, and trying to be really deliberate in using my prep to get everything done as much as I can, using that time before and after school. Just having a set time of like, I need to leave by here. My first year teaching, I was at school. I was directing the musical, and I was at school from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. and it was terrible. and I was burnt out and I wanted to quit. And so I think for teachers, we work way too hard. And so you need to set some boundaries and be firm with them and have a life. Otherwise, you won't make it very long.
Yes, that is so true. Actually, one of the, I think it was in May this year, I was reading your blog and I came across one of your posts about a book that you were reading by Angela Watson called Fewer Things Better. I listened to the book and I learned a lot of good things from it. Advice we received there is something we can do. How do you take care of your mental health?
I think one of the biggest things for me this year in particular, I always loved to read when I was younger, but then since having kids, I just found that was something that I hadn't been doing. And so I made it a priority this year that I wanted to read more. So instead of, even though I wasn't taking schoolwork home, I was just spending time just mindlessly scrolling social media. Suddenly now I'm working and doing things for Mis Clases Locas and social media and things for that. So I've personally tried to do a lot more reading. And I've also been listening to audiobooks as well. So I've been listening to audiobooks on my drive to and from school. I do enjoy working out. I need to do a better job of it. In the summer, I was so good every day when it's nice out. But then when it gets cold in the Midwest and don't go outside as much, I've been trying to just be more present with what I'm doing. So if I'm with my kids, I want to be hanging out with my kids and enjoying that time. If I'm with my husband on a date, I'm not on my phone, I'm with him. Same with then when I'm at school, that I'm focused on my students. Like being prepared helps me. So when I leave on Friday, my plans for the next week of school are ready. So then that way, all weekend, I don't have to think about them. I know my week is ready when I get to school. Also on Sunday, I like to grocery shop and make a big meal. So then my lunches are ready. And so that just helps me pick out my clothes. So then I'm ready for the week. And I feel like then with all of the stresses of things with kids and teaching, if I'm prepared, that helps me have a better week and go into it with a better mental state.
Could you share with us one of your classroom management strategies?
I think for me, the biggest thing that I have found is building relationships and connections with students. In the beginning, before I was using comprehensible input strategies, I think I struggled a lot more with behavior management because I wasn't getting to know my students. And now my students are kind of the heart and center of my curriculum. And so we start class by chatting about how people are feeling, where are they going tonight, what's going on, is there a game, talking about what you did this weekend and just connecting with each other. And then following up the next day of how did your game go? How was your concert? What was Allstate like? That conference you went to. And so by building those connections, I found there's really not as many behavior management opportunities because if the students know you care and are connected with them, they tend to just kind of behave better. And so that's kind of what I found is just build relationships first. And then if all else fails, a little proximity does wonders as well. Of while I'm reading, someone else is reading, just walking around and sitting right next to somebody who needs a little extra support or direction.
So basically you start your day using English just to check on your students, say, hey, how are things going? And then you switch to the target language.
Well, actually, most of that is in the target language.
Okay.
So we're starting by saying, like even in Spanish 1, asking them, ¿cómo estás? How are you feeling? And the students going around and saying how they're feeling. And just that little thing, you can see who's having a good day, who's having a not good day, and why. Sometimes the English comes up in there, but we're doing that in the target language. We're talking about, I'm going to basketball, I'm going to football, I'm going to, and so we can, and I'd write these new phrases up there and then they're used all the time. They then have that kind of self-selected vocabulary if they know how to talk about what they're interested in. I'm going to play volleyball because that's what they want to talk about. So I think you don't have to wait to save that until the sports unit way later. You can talk about it right away because that's what's on the minds of your students. And so, we are doing that chatting like in the target language.
Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. If anyone wants to connect, you can find me on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all at Mis Clases Locas, also with my blog as well, misclaseslocas.com. So I do love helping to save teachers time, and so connect, and we can hang out virtually or maybe in person if you want to come hang out in Iowa.